Hey everybody, Captain Joe here from Help Heal Veterans here at NAMTA, great city of St. Louis, and we're going to redo our series we started last year talking about how creativity heals. Instead of really talking about healing, we're going to talk about resiliency. And our first guest today is Seth Martin, who is Army, Air Force, current Air Force, former Army,
Yep.
And he runs Hyatt. So Seth, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself to start off with, and
Sure.
tell us a little bit about Hyatt.
Sure. So my background, before I got in the art supply industry, I enlisted in the Air Force when I was 19 as a security forces personnel in the Air Force, and I did that for about 7 years while I was going through college and law school. After I graduated law school, I took a commission in the New York Army National Guard as a JAG officer. I did that for about 7 years, took a short break in service, and then re-enlisted back in the Air Force Security Forces again. Currently a Master Sergeant in the Air Force Reserves and
Awesome.
Security Forces.
That's great.
As far as my time in this industry and with Hyatt's, Hyatt's All Things Creative is a third generation family owned business in Buffalo, New York. It was started by my wife's grandfather, and when I was studying for the bar exam, I started working part-time for the business, and right before I left for JAG school, found out my wife was pregnant. When I came back just before she gave birth. She decided she wanted to take a little time coming back, and I offered to take up the work that she was doing for the business, and then never left. So I kind of took some of the skills that I got from the military and from my legal background and brought those to our company, and we've been able to grow it over the years to, we have the largest art supply store in North America. We're also one of the largest e-commerce sellers in the fine art arena as well. So it's been a great experience, very maybe unusual career path,
Right.
but yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So you are actually the perfect guy and guest to talk a little bit about what we talk about resiliency. Now, we've been talking a little bit about here at Help Heal Veterans about how we not just help with the healing, but building resiliency. And the military has a program called Warrior Resiliency, which is prepping our military warfighters to prep for the stresses of combat. And creativity will be a big piece of that. So for you to have a piece where you're talking to the consumer, as far as, putting creative products out there and being, military and, being there on the, helping, being part of our warfighting force, you've come with a great perspective. So, building on that, first off, I want to talk about maybe what do you think it means to be resilient? What does resiliency mean to you?
I mean, I think if you boil it down, a lot of it is being able to bend but not break, being able to take, all the things that we have to do as service members and, manage it and deal with the stressors and keep going forward in a way that's not detrimental to yourself and those around you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about just a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, I had just come back into the service, and I did my due diligence. I talked to our commander, finding out what the deployment cycles were looking like and trying to gauge my expectations of what was going to happen in the first 6-12 months of returning to that unit. And I thought everything was in line, but then one day I get a call on Wednesday. I still remember it was Wednesday, July 25th, saying, you're on the deployment, report to the base Monday the 1st. So 5 days notice. I have to drop all of my, 2 days to reassign all the work that I'm doing within our company, figure out what my family's going to be doing for the next 8 months, figure out, how my wife's going to deal with all the stuff, both on the business side, because we both run the business, as well as the kids and the family and everything else. And so obviously tremendously stressful time for myself, for my wife, for my kids, for everybody around us, and how to deal with those stressors in a way that allows me and allows those around me to continue the mission and successfully complete that operation that we were doing, but also make sure things aren't falling apart at home and bounce back and continue to go forward.
And that's great. And and it's not unusual. I mean,
Right.
Our military members, but also just our consumers. So how do you think creativity, from where you sit, running an art supply store, trying to bring joy, to people's lives, how do you think being creative for some of the products that Hyatt provides actually supports that resiliency thing?
Well, I think it gets you thinking less linear. You think more spatially. You think about things from different angles, and it allows you to, in some sense, compartmentalize, because you can maybe take a break and have something that's just for you, that's not about, the stressors that you're dealing with in the day. It also allows you to look at problems from a different angle and hopefully find a better way of approaching it that doesn't break you down.
Yeah. Great. Now, do you have any stories that, besides your own, or maybe your own, about how being creative has kind of helped you deal with something that's actually popped up maybe later, that it was good that you had that habit?
I mean, there's always things that go wrong or that are unexpected, and being able to react to them and step back and reevaluate and try to find a better solution. It's something we're always trying to do,
right?
Because there's never a book or a manual for whatever the biggest problem you're dealing with that day. There's usually not a manual for it.
Yeah.
And so being able to evaluate and problem solve, and creativity ties very deeply into that.
Yeah.
Similarly, I think there's a certain warmth that comes from creativity. Even though you don't normally think about art and the military going hand in hand, there's a reason when you go overseas, all the Jersey Barriers and Texas Barriers and all those things have murals all over them from every unit that has been there over the last 5, 10, however many years that installation has been open. And there's a reason that there's such a cottage industry of small craft manufacturing that's geared around coins and commemorative items and things that are creatively produced that signify the time and the effort that we put into our service.
Yeah, I guess that's a great point. I guess maybe the fact that you can express yourself. Sometimes there's so much built inside of you, it's got to get out. And be it it's through my music, be it my art, being with my friends, writing, journaling. Those are all things that I've seen, men and women who are hardened to look like they're tough people.
Right.
Really hardened, usually people you want to think in our country, but they have that balanced warrior. It's almost like that warrior poet thing kind of going on, which is great. Which is why we talk about how it heals when people are when our war fighters maybe need something helping. They experience something helps they need to recover from, but it also helps them prep for when they have that time.
Yeah,
have that outlet.
I think it helps you pause and take a step back and re-engage. And then similarly, I think for people that once you've left service, it kind of helps you to look back and think about it and remember the things that you did.
Right.
I think that's why there's so many military and veteran people that have created like Etsy businesses and things like that do.
Right.
Whether it's using CNCs and computerized equipment to create small scale manufacturing, or doing custom hand done work that ties back to what they did in the military, and just to kind of look back and feel proud about what they've accomplished.
It does. It helps. For us, I see it like it helps build that foundation. That creativity thing, but it also helps you kind of rebuild. Like one of the things I really hear from some of our folks is like, I'm coming back from deployment and I'm having a hard time connecting with my kids.
Right.
Kind of a thing. And we're not talking, but we do something together. Be it like Legos, or we're going to paint, or whatever.
Yeah.
And building a model, and now you're starting to reconnect.
Right.
And it kind of helps rebuild, as well as rebuild that resiliency in a way.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely agree with that. I mean, it's hard, when you've been in an environment where you maybe it's something that the people around you can't relate to.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that you don't even feel like you can talk about. Because a lot of us have been to places where you're going to an undisclosed location.
Right.
So I can say I went over to Southwest Asia, but I can't say where I actually was.
Right.
And that makes it even that much harder to unload, and you feel like you're trapped inside yourself. But if there's ways that you can get to it that other people can relate to, it can be kind of a freeing experience.
I know. Well, you put on your other hat as a business leader, kind of a thing. They're talking about creativity and wellness a lot within our industry. The craft and the art industry. Why do you think? Do you think we're doing a good enough job educating people about the benefits of creativity?
I mean, I think people are trying to. I think there's a lot of effort going into it. One of my personal critiques, I think wellness is kind of it's a term that's hard to define, and it means something different to everybody.
Right.
So what might really help one person might not appeal to somebody else.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard thing to nail down, but I do think one of the things that's good about our industry, and I'd strongly encourage anybody that's curious, if you have a local art supply store, definitely go in, check it out, see what they have, talk to them. because it's like a candy store. I mean, if you go into a large independent art supply store, there's the colors, the products, all the different things that they have and that can be created with those things is almost endless. And so it really opens up possibilities that you might not even thought of.
Yeah, right.
And half of the fun with creative materials is that there's very few limits on how you can utilize them. You know, you see people, you know, painting anything from canvases and paper all the way up to, you know, sneakers, jackets, anything you could think to customize. A lot of the products that we have been around for a long time, but then they evolve and get repackaged because somebody realized they would have another purpose that it could be used for, and then that takes off.
Right.
And so the creativity kind of can build on itself in that way.
Yeah, it seems also, I've read a lot lately, you know, that term analog hobbies, like, you know, kids are turning away from, not turning away, but maybe looking to go back to doing something a little bit more expressive with their hands versus being in that digital world. Do you kind of see that as a business owner?
I think, I mean, obviously computers and AI and, you know, video games and all that stuff is there. It definitely is, and I don't think it's changing anytime soon. But there is definitely a substantial number of people that have made a concerted effort to find something that unplugs, even for a small period of time.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's good for your mind to kind of be disconnected and just with yourself, because it gives you time to think, it gives you time to reevaluate things, and you're not just passively scrolling and passively absorbing what other information. You know,
Right.
it gives you time to reflect on things, and I think that's really healthy. And I think a lot of people have realized that, made a concerted effort to try and do that, even if only for small periods of time.
Yeah, that's great. So if you were going to give advice to somebody who was thinking, you know, say somebody in your unit now, who, you know, I'm not an artsy kind of guy or gal,
Right.
you know, what advice would you give them as far as, you know, because sometimes art can be pretty intimidating. Like there's nothing more intimidating than a blank sheet of paper, you know, kind of thing, you know, which is why kind of one of the reasons why we do crafting has almost a gateway to stuff like that. But sometimes folks don't want to take that first step. So what would you tell them, you know, to encourage them to do that?
I mean, I'm not an artist.
Yeah.
My artistic ability peaks with hand turkeys. So it doesn't have to be a barrier. There's a lot of techniques that exist that are very process oriented, that are even random. You know, things like paint pouring, splatter painting. There's a bunch of things that can be fun without having to have technical skill.
Right.
And so, if there's something that seems interesting, try it. And it doesn't have to be something you want to show anybody. You know, and if you try it and it's fun, that's good enough.
Right.
And if you try it again and it improves, then maybe that's something you want to show off and show somebody else, and that's wonderful. But if not, if it's still just for you, that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's good to try things that help, regardless of what it appears to others. It's, you know, it's no different than saying, you know, someone isn't good at running, but it's still good for them. It's still good for them to do it, and if it makes them feel good, that's fine. They don't need to go run the Boston Marathon.
Right.
If they just want to go out for a jog and they take it low and slow, and it's fun, and that helps them, then that's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, is there anything else that we haven't really talked about that you might want to mention, either about what the great work that Hyatt's doing, or maybe a message to, you know, some of the other folks out there who are maybe considering, you know, expressing themselves as a way to build a resiliency?
I mean, I think it can be intimidating. There's a lot of products that seem incredibly technical, and some of them are. But there's also a lot of things out there that there's a toehold and there's a way to get started.
Right.
And, you know, look for resources that are available. I know a lot of VSOs, a lot of VAs. We do a lot of work with the VA in Buffalo to provide for some of their services that they provide. You know, look for some of those things that kind of can be an intro and give some assistance. And, you know, a lot of people, once they try it, they get hooked, and then they go from there. And it's, you know, people are very welcoming. People are very open and love talking about art. It's one of those things that people just get passionate about.
Right.
And so in some ways it's kind of like the military. Once you start telling stories, they roll.
Right.
And so the best way to learn stuff is to start talking to people and, you know, give it a shot and see what you find enjoyable.
That's awesome. Well, thanks, Seth. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you for tuning in here at Help Heal Veterans. Visit your local art supply store. That's my message to you. We at Heal Vets, we do our best to provide the tools to help creativity, to build resiliency, and to help heal the wounds of war. but we can't be everywhere. But your local art supply store is. So reach out. Thanks so much.